How you doing? Welcome back to the Dublin Academy of Education podcast number 5. And we're talking about today how to start becoming a more effective communicator. So, workshop 5 of 5 from our personal development club with myself, David Lewis, and Chris Lauder. All good?
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I'll kick things off. Right. So, personal development. Okay. We've covered off many of what we call life skills that are going to be important for you as you get through the Leaving Cert, get into college, and get into the workplace, whatever it is you decide to do, right? So we started off with goal setting. That was our first module. Then we moved on to developing that good morning routine. So how do you start the day? How you start the day is a massive part of how you finish the day, right? Then we moved on to how you build those good habits, those strong habits, and build those rituals that are going to help you achieve the goals you want to achieve, okay? And then we moved on to fears. How do you overcome fears? Understanding what is fear and what are the tools we can use to overcome them, right? So we're now at the end of the journey here. Module 5 is all about how to start becoming a more effective communicator, right? Now, of all the life skills, myself and Dave firmly believe that this is the silver bullet, guys. Learning how to become a great communicator is unbelievably important to achieve whatever goals that you've set for yourself, okay? A lot of the time people think that the students who get 600 points in the Leaving Cert are the ones who are going to go on and do the greatest things and be the most successful. But more often than not, it's not those students necessarily. It's the students who are the best at communicating. Okay, the ones who can communicate to other people in a clear and effective way, who can share their ideas eloquently, and who can influence other people to follow them on a journey maybe they're going on. So communication, guys, is so important, right? It's going to help you do things like give a presentation. So if you're in college, you're going to be made to do presentations, okay? It's just part of it. Usually every course does it. And if you're able to give a very clear presentation that's impactful and your message is understood, it's going to be very important, okay? Other things like getting a job interview, okay? Being a very clear, concise communicator is a very big part of that. And, it's also very important if you're trying to get someone to help you do something, okay? If you need help moving house or something, you want to make sure that you can convince someone else to help you do that, okay? Great communication is all a part of that, right? So with module 5 here, we've got 3 main outcomes. With personal development, we're all about outcomes. We're always trying to achieve something, okay? And today we want to achieve 3 things. Number 1 is to cover the basics with you. What are the basic building blocks of communication? Always a good place to start. So we're going to cover those. Our second outcome is we want you to understand what is effective communication and why is it important, right? So the key word there is effective, right? Write this down, right? Effective means getting the job done. So we want you to know how to communicate in such a way that you get the job done, okay? And understand why that's important. And the final third point, the third outcome we want you to achieve is to understand the 5 golden conversation rules. So 5 rules that are going to help you have really great quality conversations with people. Okay? Good stuff. So, flipping over there on page 3, you have the basics. Okay? What is basic communications made up of? Okay? Now, first of all, what is basic communication? It is, write this down, it's the act of transferring information from one place to another. That's the basics of communication. Okay? We're trying to get a message from A to B. Okay? What is the reason for that? Why do we communicate? We communicate because we're trying to achieve an outcome. Okay, we want to achieve something, we want to get something done, so we communicate. The reason that human beings are the most successful species on the planet is because we can communicate with each other. Okay, we can form groups, okay, we can form tribes, we can get a lot more done as a big group than we can as individuals. And human beings are the best communicators of all the species that are on planet Earth. And we are the best at achieving outcomes because we can communicate, okay? Now, within communication, there are 3 elements that make up the message. There are 3 parts to your message that you're conveying to the other person or the other people, okay? They are, number 1, the verbal part, right? So you want to write this in. It's the words you use when you're communicating. That's it, just the words. What are the words you're using? Okay, that's the first part. Okay? The second part is the tonality. Okay? The tonality. Has anyone ever said to you, a teacher or a parent, don't take that tone with me. Okay? What they're saying is don't use the words like that. It's how you're saying the words. How do the words sound when you say them? Okay? For example, what's the volume like? Are you speaking loudly or are you speaking quietly? Are you speaking fast? Are you speaking very fast, or are you speaking very slowly? okay? Or are you speaking with an intensity, okay, with a lot of passion, you really care about what you're saying, or are you not? Okay, that's the tonality, it's how the words sound, okay? And finally, the third part of the message is your body language. What is your body doing while you're communicating? Are you making eye contact? You have your arms folded, or are you slouching over? Okay, there are things to think about, right? So on page 4 there, we have what we call the communication pie. That communication pie splits up by order of significance each part of those messages, right? Each part of those elements of the message. For example, it's we've got the verbal part, we've got the tonality, and we've got the body language, right? Each of those takes up a piece of the communication pie that's in front of you there. The pie is made up of a 7% segment, 38% segment, and a 55% segment. Now, the question we ask the class is, what percentage of the message is made up of the words you use? Is it 55%? Is it about half the message made up of the words you use? And the tone, would that be maybe 38% of the message? And maybe the body language is worth 7% of the message, right? And what's interesting is almost in every time we ask the students, they get this wrong, okay? What might surprise you is that 7% of the message that you convey to the other person is made up of the verbal part, the words you actually use. 38% of the message is made up of how you say the words, how the words are said, okay? And 55% of the message is made up of the body language you're using while you're conveying the message. What is your body doing, okay? So what does this tell us about communication? That we have to be more conscious of how we sound and what our bodies are doing than we are about the words we're actually using, because they are really sending the vast majority of the message to the other person. They're conveying how we're feeling, and they're conveying, what is the real outcome of the message that we're trying to portray to the other person. An activity that we get the students to do is, we don't have any students with us now, but we can do this, myself and Dave can do this. It's on page 5, and it's an activity we do to convey just how this works, okay? The communication pie. And it's called, it's not what you said, it's how you said it, okay? So what we're trying to do here is we're going to see how the same words, i.e. the verbal part, said in different ways, the tonality piece, okay? The tone. And using various movements, i.e. the body language, can convey totally different messages. So the same words said in different ways and using various movements can convey totally different messages, okay? So I'll be person A here, Dave can be person B. I'm going to ask Dave a simple question. I'm going to say, how are you getting on? And Dave's going to give me the answer, yeah, great, thanks, okay? But Dave's going to, first of all, say it as if he was excited, okay? So we'll go with this. Hey Dave, how are you getting on?
Yeah, great, thanks.
Interesting. Now, I'm going to ask Dave to do it a second time, but I want him to say it as if he's miserable. Dave, how are you getting on?
Yeah, great, thanks.
Notice he used the exact same words. The exact same words. Yeah, great, thanks. In both cases. Exact same. But there was a big, big difference in the message that Dave sent me. Big difference. We'll try again. Dave, as if you're excited. Hey, how are you getting on?
Yeah, great, thanks.
Notice, first of all, his voice. Okay? Much more elevated, more upbeat. It sounded kind of positive and energetic. Okay? His body language. He turned and faced me. He looked me in the eyes. Okay? He then smiled. Okay? That was giving me a huge amount of information. Dave actually is feeling great. And he thanked me at the end of it. He is feeling good. He's looking at me. He's using positive body language. Making eye contact. His voice sounds positive. Okay? Very different. Big difference. Now, Dave, tell me again. You're say, yeah, great, thanks, as if you were miserable. How you getting on, Dave?
Yeah, great, thanks.
Again, same words, okay? His voice was shallow, okay? Low-pitched, spoke quite slowly, okay? He didn't really make eye contact at all with me, okay? He looked at the ground. He was hunched over. You know, he had kind of closed-off body language, okay? That conveyed a huge amount of information to me that maybe Dave wasn't okay. Maybe he wasn't great, thanks, at all, okay? So what we ask the students to do is then we ask them to try and convey other emotions by saying, yeah, great, thanks. How might you say it if you were concerned? You know, Dave, you might ask me.
How are you getting on?
Yeah, great, thanks. Or, you know, concerned, you know, like my voice kind of shook a little bit. I kind of had hunched up, kind of body language stiff. I kind of looked away, I looked up at the sky, you know, saying as if I was concerned. You know, and how might you say it if you're confused? So I'll ask you. Confused. So you look a bit confused right now. Hey man, how you getting on?
Sorry, I got upset with these. I look confused. Okay. I don't know. How do I do confused?
You ask me.
Okay. No, I'll do it. Don't worry, I got this. You keep this going. You guys do this. Right? This is an act. This is a pro here. Go ahead.
Okay. You ready? Hey Dave, how you getting on?
Yeah, great, thanks.
Okay, he was shaking his head. It was uncertain. His voice again was a little bit uncertain. You could hear just the nuances there in his tone. He looked a little bit confused. He didn't know where to look. He was looking at the sky half the time. So you get the idea, guys, that the words you use can be identical in one message to another, but convey a completely different message. Okay? So what we look at, and body language being a huge part of that. So on page 6 there, what we ask the students to do is to give us some examples of positive body language and give us some examples of negative body language, right? So we don't have a room full of students now, so we'll give you them, right? So very, very simple. We covered this already. The first positive piece of body language, one of the most important things you can do to convey positivity is smile, okay? Smile. It's so, so important. That says a lot about how you're feeling. And if you smile, you're immediately going to get a reaction from somebody in which they will smile as well. Okay, positive body language like that, like smiling, is very powerful. Other things are eye contact. So if you look at the person, okay, that's going to convey positive body language. Now, don't look at them too much because that can be a little bit weird, okay? And sometimes if you look too intensely, it can be a bit aggressive. But more often than not, if you just maintain eye contact for an acceptable amount of time, you're going to convey a more sincere, positive message to the other person. Okay, and other thing is, for example, if you've got your arms folded and you're hunched over, sorry, that's bad body language. You don't be like that, because have your arms open. Look at the person, face the other person. Have your arms open and be kind of open to the person. So have open body language. Then with negative body language, it's just the exact opposite of that stuff. So instead of smiling, frown. If you want to convey a negative bit of body language, frown. Don't smile. Don't make eye contact. Look away. Look at the ground. Or if you want to be defensive and not really open up to the person, have your arms folded and closed off. Don't even face the other person. Now that would be negative body language. Okay? And the real lesson here is, guys, we want you to understand the communication pie, because you need to be aware not only of what you're doing, but what the other person is doing when you're communicating. You want to be able to think about, what's my body doing while I'm talking to this person? Am I being open? Am I being present? Am I standing up straight? Am I making that eye contact? What's my voice doing while I'm talking to them? Am I positive? Am I upbeat? Am I speaking with enthusiasm? Or am I not? Okay, because the words you say are going to have they are important. They're 7% though. Remember, we want you to think about what you're doing and how you're doing it. But we also want you to be able to pick up on other people's tone, other people's body language, because in order to be a great communicator, it's a two-way street, and you need to be perceptive. Okay, you need to be able to pick up on their visual cues that they're giving you. They're giving you a lot of information all the time. Okay, that's part one, the basics. Okay, they're building blocks. The second part is, what is effective communication and why is it important? Okay, as I said, effective, key word there. Effective means getting the job done. So when we're communicating, we're trying to achieve an outcome. We're trying to get a job done, aren't we? Right? So in order to communicate effectively, we want to make sure that our communication gets that job done. Okay? Now, a question is, do you think great communication is a talent? Are people just born as great communicators? They're just lucky. Okay? Or is it a skill? Now, like everything personal development, if you've been following us this whole way, guys, this is a skill. Okay, being a great communicator is a skill. Being a confident person is a skill. You can work on this stuff. If you put the time and energy and practice in, you can learn how to become a great communicator. Okay, they're not just born, they're made. Okay, and that's what this module is all about. It's all about helping you, first of all, understand what communication is, but start on the journey towards mastering communication. It's a long, long journey. Myself and Dave are only at the early stages ourselves. But it's a learnable skill, guys. You can practice this and get better at it. Right, so what is effective communication? This is a bit of a wordy and boring definition, but it's important for us just to cover it off. It is the sending of accurate information and receiving feedback that the message was clearly understood. Okay, so it's the sending of accurate information and receiving feedback that the message was clearly understood. So, as I said, communication is all about achieving an outcome, okay? Did you send the accurate information to the other person? Did they understand it and comprehend it then in such a way that they can then do whatever it is you want done, okay? That's what effective communication needs to be, okay? And in order for communication to be effective, it has to have the 3 C's, right? The 3 C's of effective communication. Okay? The first one is your information has to be correct. If you want to achieve an outcome, you have to give them the correct information. You know, if the teachers at the academy were to teach our students the wrong stuff, it wouldn't be a very effective classroom. Okay? We have to make sure that we teach exactly what's on the Leaving Cert, exactly what those students need to know to make sure that they can put their best foot forward in June when the exams come around. Okay? Unbelievably important. Your information has to be correct. Okay? The second C is it has to be concise. Okay? And this is the most important C. Okay? A lecturer I had in UCD once said to me, don't use 8 words when 5 will do. And what he means by that is, if you're trying to convey a message, only use the amount of words you absolutely have to use. Don't fluff it up with too many words. Okay? Don't waffle. Right? So be very specific about what it is you want done or what the message is. Don't be going on for ages about stuff that's not relevant to the outcome you're trying to achieve. The third C then is be clear. So speak in a clear manner that people can understand. You know, for example, if you're on a bad line on a phone call and it keeps breaking up, end the phone call and text the person, because that message is not going to be clear at all and the outcome is certainly not going to be achieved. Or if you're in a really loud room and there's loads of people talking and screaming and roaring, that person's not going to be able to hear you. And that's not going to be a clear, effective piece of communication. Right? So you want to make sure you got those 3 C's. It's correct information. It's concise. It's delivered in a concise manner. That's not full of waffle and rubbish that's not relevant, okay, for that outcome. And finally, it's delivered in a clear and concise way. Now, you're not speaking too fast or mumbling. You're speaking clearly and precisely. Okay? There are the 3 C's. Right, so that's kind of the boring stuff, okay? Now we have to ask ourselves, why is that important? Why is it important to communicate effectively? Okay, well, there's 3 benefits. There are 3 benefits to effective communication. Okay, the first one is you're more likely to achieve the outcome. If you're an effective communicator, you're more likely to get the job done. You're more likely going to tick that box and achieve the outcome. You know, for example, if you're working on a group project as part of a school, in school as part of one of your subjects, and there's 3 or 4 in the group, and someone's kind of elected to be the leader of the group, that person has to make sure that they delegate out those tasks in a clear and concise manner so that the person understands. You're more likely to get the job done. You're more likely to achieve the outcome if you communicate effectively. Okay, the second benefit to effective communication is you'll save time. Okay, you're not going to waste time. If you effectively communicate to someone what the message is, they don't have to come back to you later and ask, oh, do you mind reminding me of what that was? You know, if you communicate effectively to them, if you're doing that group project, as I said, and you're very clear about what the outcome is for each person, what their responsibility and role is, and they understand it, they repeat it back to you even, it's very unlikely they're going to come back and ask you to reiterate what you want them to do. So it's going to save you time. That's the second one. But the third one is probably the most important, is you're going to build yourself up as a more credible person. If you're an effective communicator, okay, you say stuff in a clear way, in a thoughtful way, and people understand what you're saying, you're going to build yourself up with credibility. Okay, and that's really, really important. You don't want a reputation as someone who waffles and talks, too much and doesn't get the message across, doesn't get what needs to be said delivered in a way that it needs to be delivered. Okay? Now, one thing we get the class to do here at this point is we ask them to write down a couple of things they feel effective communication could help them with, right? And we don't obviously have a classroom with us, but things are, if you're an effective communicator, it's going to help you interview for a job. So when you come out of college and you need to get your first job, or maybe you're in school and you want a summer job, whatever it is, if you're an effective communicator, you listen to what the questions are and you give a good answer to the questions, you are going to stand a much better chance of getting a job. If you want to get a promotion then in that job, if you're an effective communicator, you get a reputation of getting the job done and being good and organised and communicating very clearly to people, you're going to get a promotion, okay, in time. Also things like winning a debate, maybe presentation skills, resolving a conflict. If you're a good communicator and you're able to listen to 2 sides of an argument and then put across maybe a bit of mediation in between the two, being a great communicator is really going to help with that. So, there you are. Over to you, Dave.
What we then do in this part of the class is we do this thing called the talking exercise. So we set it up in a certain way that we make the students feel a little bit out of their comfort zone, potentially in a group of 3, 4, depends what it actually is. And we say what we're going to do is practice on those things that Chris has told us about body language, about tonality, about the words, about being clear, concise and correct. And we want the person to give a bio of themselves. So on the first days of school, or like maybe potentially a new job, or in college, you're going to have to sit down, and typically what lecturers tend to do, especially in smaller classes, is they go around the class and you have to introduce yourself, and it is quite nerve-wracking. There's people shaking and stuff like that. So we sell it like that, and we get people to in front of these other students who potentially they know or maybe don't know very well. You know, give stuff like their name, their date of birth, where they're from, what they like doing, all that sort of stuff, and we give them 30 seconds each, and we start to try put a small bit of pressure on them. And in today's class, for example, we broke it up into groups of 3. 3 people had to go for 30 seconds each, and then I asked the student to tell me about another student. Now, sometimes, depending on how the feedback I kind of see from the class, I want them to not be able to know something from a different student, or sometimes I pick a confident student who maybe I want to know will remember what other students have said. But the whole point behind this is we say that most of the people in this class got way more nervous to speak about somebody else because they didn't listen. They were so focused on what they were about to say, they didn't listen. And the whole take-home point is that 45% of our communication should be listening. Okay? And a lot of people do not realize that. And that's what we're going to build on here. So that was that idea. On the next page then, we talk about the listening dilemma. 45% of our time communicating is listening, but usually overlooked. Now again, listening, could come in all sorts of different forms. In terms of me being a teacher, I'm not asking people to give me feedback and speak to me all straight away, but I can do that by asking them questions and stuff. But I'm like listening, I'm looking at them, I'm looking at their body language, I'm looking at their tone when they're answering questions or talking to me, and that can tell me a hell of a lot about them and how I need to adjust what I'm saying, how I say it. Okay, so it's really, really, really important that you know about that. On this page, it says we can speak at about a rate of 150 words per minute, but we can hear up to 1,000 per minute. Okay, this gives us a lot of time while the other person is talking. And what do we do at that time? Now, very often people hear what you say, but they don't listen. So I know from being a teacher that in the class, at least once a day, I am saying something and I'm still almost explaining something. The person is fully not listening to me. They know that I'm saying something. They're waiting for me to stop speaking. They put up their hand and then they ask the question that I was literally explaining on the board because they are not listening. Now I understand. Okay, sometimes you can lose focus. That's fine. That's not what I'm saying here. But if you were in a class and you were listening, well, that would save you a hell of a lot of time in terms of study and your direction of your study periods and what you have to do. Okay, but how can we focus? Because that's the hard part. How can you focus on what that person is saying? So I gave 4 ideas that have helped me focus on people in conversations, and I'm sure there's way more. But the first one is to concentrate on the 3 big ideas Chris spoke about. So what message are they trying to convey? So focus on their words, their tone of those words, and their body language. If you focus on that the way your teacher is presenting something, you can very quickly see if this is massively important or not. Like if I'm, smacking the board out, this thing here, this one piece of information, you can tell that's massively important versus me saying. So what we're doing, going through this, it's massively different. If you focus on that, you'll know when something is important. The next thing is you should not think about what to say next. If you're speaking to somebody, they mention a word, you shouldn't be formulating your next 5 minutes of speech in your head. You should still be listening to what they're saying. You're getting information off them. You're actually directing yourself in a certain manner, and potentially the speech you have is 3 minutes out of date if you do not listen to exactly what they're saying, if you're thinking about what to say next. The third one is interacting with small gestures and verbal affirmations. So, do you know when you're talking to somebody and you're saying something, you're telling them a story, and if they're going, yeah, that encourages you to keep going. That encourages you to tell more. How weird is it if you're telling something to somebody and they're just really strange? You're like, sorry, are you? And they're, no, I'm listening. So if you encourage them, and not only will it help you keep focused because you have to kind of nod at the appropriate time or say yeah, or I get you, yeah. that'll help you listen to them, but it'll also encourage them to say more as well. So that will keep you focused. Last thing is, don't interrupt them. So if somebody is saying something, the worst thing you can have is shouting out in the middle of them. Okay, because this not only breaks their concentration and their flow, it'll break yours as well. You see something and you go off on a tangent somewhere else, that's it, gone. These are ideas I've used for focus, just for me to pay attention to. Sometimes I've gone to see lectures, I've gone to see speakers, and I know if I can just get one piece of information out of this, it's been completely worthwhile. And I need to pay attention. Sometimes it's not the easiest thing to do in some of the talks that I've actually gone to attend, but I know they have valuable information that will help me. Just like pretty much anything, any conversation you have, the other person always knows something you don't. So there are ways I have to stay focused when I want to. The golden conversation rules. We've delved in and we've distilled out 5 golden conversation rules. And I remember when myself and Chris were coming up with this, we said, what is the whole purpose of some sort of communication? And the whole purpose, and it has it on the very top here, is how the person feels. Okay, at the end of the conversation or the interaction or the presentation, whatever it is, it's all about how the person feels. And I know from giving a class that sometimes I could give what I would feel is an absolutely unbelievable class in terms of content, but if I don't finish the last 5 minutes on an upbeat spiral, on a recap, on it going well, if it kind of filters out, I know that student or those students are leaving the room and they're kind of, that was a fine class, it was all right. Because they are not leaving feeling, wow, look at all I've done. So that's the same in a one-on-one conversation. If you make somebody feel good about themselves, they're more likely, yeah, that was great, I want to interact with them again, I want to do what they asked me to do. Or potentially, I might want a student to feel a slight bit of anxiety around a certain test, so they go home and study, so it motivates them to go and study. Or maybe I want a student or somebody I'm speaking to feel confident. Okay, so I always think about when I'm having an interaction, when I'm giving a class, what is my take-home feeling? As well as the content, and then I can start building and using these rules towards that. So the feeling is massively, massively important. The feeling you have about somebody influences your actions and what you think about them and what you're going to do or not do for them in the future. So that is extremely important. You need to leave it with the other person feeling you are competent or feeling confident or feeling happy about you. How we do that here is these 5 golden rules. Okay, so there are probably way more, but these are 5 really, really good ones that you can use right now. Like the second you turn this podcast off, you can use them right now. First one is, don't multitask. And that is, what do I mean? Well, have you ever been speaking to somebody and as you're speaking to them, you're telling a story which you can't wait to tell. You can't wait to tell them about what you have done. And they're on their phone. They're like, yeah. How annoying is that? How rude is that to be on your phone when you're doing something? Like, it makes you feel terrible. Okay, so don't multitask. One of my friends does that the whole entire time. And it actually makes me angry talking to him because it feels as if you're not worthwhile. You are not conveying that emotion to the other person. They feel bad, just like we had a second ago. Next one is use open-ended questions. And I find this quite difficult sometimes when I'm talking to a class because they're afraid to talk in front of the rest of the class. I'd ask someone, what are they doing at the weekend? And in the hope they'd say, well, I'm doing this and this, because that's an open-ended question. They kind of have the hacks around it, nothing. But if you try to ask more open-ended questions, you're going to get more information, which is going to make the person feel more confident and feel more outgoing. And then you can listen to what they're saying, and then you can respond in an appropriate manner. So asking open-ended questions like who, what, where, when, and how, versus, was it good? It's like, yeah. It's not encouraging them to say more stuff. So if you can ask open-ended questions, you're going to get more information. You're going to allow the person to speak more. You're going to be able to listen more effective communication. Part 3, if you don't know, say you don't know. And what does that mean? Well, that means if somebody, it's not an embarrassment if someone says, oh, do you know Jim? And you go, no, I don't know him. You should say you don't know him. You should not lie. You should not tell this tiny lie, say you know Jim, and then a week later you've got to build on that lie and build on it and build on it again. And in 5 weeks' time they go, did you see Jim? And then you're like, who's Jim? If you don't know someone or you don't know something, say you don't know it. And there's nothing more frustrating from a teacher's point of view. If I'm going through some maths with someone and there's a part of the maths, let's just say, and I go, do you know that? Yeah. And it takes 5 minutes to realise, actually, the student didn't know that part. And that's the one part. So if you don't know something, be more honest and say you don't know. That will allow the person to explain it. And very often they would love to explain it, or they'd love to tell you who Jim is. And that will actually help lead the conversation. So being fully honest in that sense, people kind of feel embarrassed about saying they don't know something or someone. Be honest in it. Really, really important. It could start a great conversation. It could help you. It could lead to the actual outcome of the conversation of what you want. Last two are my favorite ones. Okay, 4 is don't use their story to promote yourself. That is crucial. Have you ever done something that you're proud of, or you said something to somebody and they go, yeah, no, I remember I did, and they've done it better. They've always done it better. Like maybe, I ran 5K. Oh yeah, I ran 15K. All right, cheers. You automatically feel bad. So imagine you were doing that to them. I make, whatever, I got 60% on a test. You're buzzing. You studied really hard for this test. I got 91. Or, I saw Johnny Sexton in town the other day. Yeah, remember the time I went to town? I saw Johnny Sexton 10 times. He's like, all right, cheers. You're making that person feel like shit, being honest with you. So you should not use their story to promote yourself. You should use their story to boost them. You should say, wow, unbelievable. That was class seeing Johnny Sexton. Or, you got 61, brilliant. I know you were studying very hard for that test. You're like, oh, thanks. What was the other one? The 5K, unreal, fair play. Well done getting out and doing that. That is going to make the person feel better. And there's a teacher in this school called Carl Bryan who actually is the master of this. I don't know even if he's consciously the master of this. But when you have a conversation with him, you feel like the best person in the entire world. Because he asks you questions about you. You could say, I ran 100 meters. Fair play, man. Oh my, well done. But in a sincere way. And you leave that conversation feeling unbelievable. Because he does not use the story to promote himself at all. Most of the time, he's done loads of the stuff that I'd be saying to him anyway. But that is just an extreme example of it. Do not use it to promote yourself. Otherwise, you're just going to go on a downward spiral with that person. Last one is stay away from the details. So stay away from the details. That means when you're telling a story, the details do not matter. They are like the worst part of the story. So a thing could be if I was telling you about when I went into town. I went into town on Friday. Saturday. Friday thing was I went Friday. I got the bus. I got the 145 or the 145 or the 15. I think I got the 15. I got the 155 and I got the 155 at about 1 or I got about 1. How crap is that story so far? That is the worst story of all time. That has nothing to do with it. I was telling you these details that were so irrelevant. So when you're actually having a conversation, stay away from the details. Tell them the crux of the story, the cliff notes, the summary of it, the takeaway points, and that is what they will resonate with. No one has got, if you tell this unbelievable story, say I went into town and, I don't know, I went on Grafton Street and I bussed with U2 in front of 100. If I was still telling the story about being on the 1-4, waiting for the 145 academy, you're not listening. No one cares. No one goes and retells that story. Do you hear Dave? Was getting the 145 at 123. No one cares. No one cares. So tell them the actual proper part of the story. Overall, a general rule, if I could just give you one thing from these golden rules, it would be to listen. Because if you listen to somebody else, in something that we'll see now in a minute, if you listen to somebody else, not only do you encourage them, not only do you make them feel listened to, you make them feel better, which is generally the outcome of your conversation. But you can also take that and respond in an effective manner. Okay, fantastic. So the last part we would say here is actually like rapport. This idea called rapport. So if you're making someone feel good about themselves, you develop something called rapport. So what rapport actually is what's the actual definition of rapport? Rapport
it's like finding something common with another person.
Yeah. So for example, we were to try to develop rapport here. I'm not going to say to you. Yeah, Chris, I was doing this astrophysics at the weekend. You don't like astrophysics, no. So rapport would be asking somebody questions about something that you have in common or something that you know they like. So, did you see the United match of the weekend? Oh, how did you think you played it? Oh, okay, great. Do you playing much football? Or something that you know they like. So we're often, more in tune with people that are like us or people that are like who we want to be. So if you actually have rapport with someone, if you know somebody likes a certain thing, ask them about it. And how would you get that? How would you know about that sort of stuff? From listening from before. You listen to their answers and then suddenly you can ask them questions about themselves and they feel good talking about that. So how do we establish rapport? A couple of reasons. Ask questions. Dig for something that you have in common. because there has to be something gone. Very often, again, like your friends are people who are like you. And then how do you get those, how do you do those two things? By listening. As we said, 45% of your communication is actually listening to someone. So you can actually develop rapport even further by mimicking, doing something like mimicking their body language or mimicking their tonality. Like, have you ever been like, you're a little bit tired and you're a bit down and someone's there, how are you doing? Like really energetic in your face, that it's just off-putting. But if they came up to you and they started speaking the same, you'd be surprised at how effective that is at building rapport and getting them to actually listen to you and want to open up to you. Okay, so in conclusion, what did we actually learn today? Well, you have here, we learned about the basics of communication. We had 7% verbal, 38% tonality, and Jesus, what does it say? How many much body language? 55% body language. Okay, fantastic. Now, just to kind of really reaffirm that, when I used to play rugby when I was younger, I'll just give you two ideas about this. One time I played a game with Leo Cullen, and Leo Cullen was speaking after the game. We'd actually lost, and he wanted to actually like give us a feeling of confidence after the game. Tell you like we're actually very good. We can achieve stuff. And he was very calm, and he just built everybody up on the team. Really calm. But it was the way he said it. He was so confident in it. His body language was so confident. He made us feel unbelievable. And like after that, he probably would have ran through a wall. I thought that I could have been anything. I could be an astronaut tomorrow if I wanted to be. That was because of his body language, of his tonality. Okay, he didn't say anything unbelievable. There's nothing that I can actually, but it was his body language and his tonality to make us feel confident. Another one was the day before a game, Paul O'Connell had a chat. And Paul O'Connell, I could not understand what he was saying. I had no idea. Like he said something about a well and going to a well to get like water, but you can only go a certain amount of times. And to this week we were going to the well. I don't know. I literally didn't know what I was saying. But after he had said it, he wanted us to fire us up for the game the next day. I would run through a wall. I would run through 4 walls just because of how he said it. And like his body like big, massive man, he just kept smacking things. And I knew that I was just going to run through a wall for it. So he wanted to make us fired up. He did it, how using those ideas. And again, like it's not verbal because I couldn't even understand what he was saying. The effective communication, as Chris said, clear, concise, and correct. If as we said, before, if you can say something in 5 words, why use 8? Okay, so clear, concise, and correct. And then we have the 5 golden rules. Don't multitask. Use open-ended questions. Don't promote yourself. If you don't know, say it. And stay away from the details. Overall then, and the last aspect will be to listen. How can you develop your skills going forward? Well, you can read books on communication, which is almost like the opposite of it, really. But that will give you strategies, but you should use those strategies or one of these strategies and go out and use it today. Use it in the corridor, use it asking a teacher for something, use it in an interview, use it talking to your parents. Just start building on it. You can read 1,000 books on how to kick a conversion, but your real learning doesn't start till you kick that first ball. So you got to use it somewhere. Now, it doesn't have to be in a public speaking manner. It can be just talking to your mate or whatever. You can watch videos on YouTube because you can then mimic, as opposed to just being in your head, that you can mimic how people use their tonality, how people use their body language, stuff that maybe before today you didn't realize was incredibly important. You can put yourself forward for situations that require skills. You can practice implementing these 5 rules, as we said. And if you want any specific recommendations whatsoever, and I'll actually touch on this now again in a second, feel free to hit in the Instagram and have a question, and myself and Chris will get on to the lads to get back to you. Maybe it could be for an interview, maybe it could be for a public speaking event, maybe it could be for just chatting to other people. I don't know what it is, but feel free to get in touch. Purposely supposed to be a little bit vague, so you can use your communication skills to go out and give them a shot. But yeah, that's it. To summarise, that is Personal Development Club. That's our 5 modules. That is our level 1 personal development for an effective student. And we started off with vision, then we had morning routines, then we started developing habits. You can see we went from a big macro starting to get more smaller and smaller and smaller. The reason you didn't break through those habits or start developing those habits or take action on them was because of fear. And then we went into the biggest fear that most people have, which is communication or public speaking. Okay, so that was our level 1. We hope you got stuff out of it. Any feedback, feel free to come let us know. If you need to know any more stuff, if you wanted to ask us any sort of questions, feel free to get in contact and we will get back to you. So, all good?
Great, thank you very much. Yeah. Thanks
All
for watching.
done.
Cheers, guys.